Okay, so this video is going to be a little bit different. Instead of breaking down something random about the furry fandom, I just wanted to talk about how this fandom really changed the course of my life. Now that's being a little bit hyperbolic, I admit, but there's a real chance that if I never found this fandom, my life would look completely different. And after thinking about it for some time, being a member of this fandom has been such a positive addition to my life in ways that are only obvious now that I've been in it for a few years. You see, growing up, my life was set up to be very linear. Do well in school, do well in college, get a job, and do that job basically until I can't anymore. And for better or for worse, I was only around other people who also had that same amount of direction in their lives, making me quite the one-dimensional person. But that all changed when I really started getting active in this fandom, since doing so really made me and my life a whole lot more interesting. So let's talk about just that. I want to show you how being a part of this often misunderstood subculture filled development gaps my degree and my career never could, and why finding your own weird community might be exactly what you need too. Let me explain. I'm sure we were all told some version of this story, but remember when you were told the right way to succeed was getting good grades, the right degree, and a stable job? That was my entire identity for years. I followed that path to the letter. I was always a good test taker, so I did well in my classes, which all led to earning that coveted degree and landing a very comfortable job right out of college. And on paper, everything looked perfect. I was living the dream that my parents, my teachers, my guidance counselors, basically everyone promised that was waiting for me at the end of all those late night study sessions. But here's what they don't tell you about following that perfect path. It can be incredibly limiting. My life before the furry fandom was like one of those train sets where the track only goes in one direction. You wake up, study, talk about the same coursework with other people in my class, go home, study some more, and repeat that day by day. My social circle consisted of everyone in the exact same or very similar degree programs as me, all getting internships and eventually jobs in the same field, and critically, nearly identical opinions on everything from sports to politics. It was to the point where we weren't just similar, we were practically clones of each other. Our heated debates about topics that we disagreed on hardly provided the diverse perspectives needed to grow as a person. But the interesting thing was, it was working. Again, I was just following the path that was set for me since I was in elementary school, and being around other people all doing the same thing created this positive feedback loop where we all reminded each other what our ultimate goals were, and in turn, we all pushed each other to keep working towards those similar goals. The thing is, while my technical skills were growing exponentially, my emotional intelligence remained rather stunted. It was to the point where I couldn't read a room or connect with anyone who didn't talk about what my friends and I talked about or had different goals than us. I also couldn't sympathize, let alone empathize, with anything that they were struggling with if it wasn't anything that took them off the path of success in school or a career. In retrospect, it was such a weird duality of life. I was successful, good grades, early experience in my field of work, and importantly, respect from my peers. Yet there was always this persistent feeling that something substantial was missing in my life at a fundamental level. And it got to a point where I would lay awake wondering why achieving everything I was supposed to still left me feeling incomplete. So I did a little soul searching, and after a lot of my life was basically set, I started more actively searching for something completely unrelated to getting ahead in my career. Something that might challenge different parts of my brain and help me connect with diverse people while still being something that I was interested in privately. And when you added all of that up, that basically led me back to the furry fandom, and that's when I started becoming a bit more active in the fandom as well, just to do something different from normal. And at the time, I really didn't think much of it. I certainly wasn't looking for anthropomorphic animal enthusiasts to change my life. That would have seemed absurd. But hey, here we are now, and as you might imagine, that all changed when I started really becoming more active in the fandom. And it all came to a head when I started going to my first few furry conventions. Those first steps into furry cons completely rewired everything I thought I knew about the fundamentals of human connection. Walking through those doors was like entering a parallel social universe. Have you ever had those moments where your brain is trying to process something so different from your normal experience that you can almost hear the gears grinding or feel your brain lagging? That was me, standing in the hotel lobby watching what I eventually found out was a doctor in a partial fox fur suit, deep in conversation with a digital artist wearing neon blue ears. And I think it was the sheer diversity of the lives of different people that hit me like a sensory overload. My usual world consisted of people following similar paths, studying in the same field of work, getting a job in the same industry, and talking about things in that field of work as well. But here, the social landscape was unpredictable, vibrant, and simply different. That's what's really cool about this fandom. Everyone is kind of from everywhere. The fandom allows construction workers to collaborate with nurses on art projects. College students from completely different fields discussed philosophy. And while there were a fair amount of people in my industry in this fandom, it almost incentivized us to talk about something different for a change, to fit in with everyone else. Now, I will say that making this transition wasn't easy. My first social interactions were honestly embarrassing. I remember this one time I approached someone with a really impressive dragon fursuit and started rambling about the technical specifications of their LED eyes. And sure, they were cordial and politely listened, but then they smoothly asked me about my favorite music. And I remember this moment so specifically because that was the first time anyone asked me that question, and in turn, I really didn't have an answer for them. And there are a bunch of other small examples like that where it took me several awkward conversations to realize people in this fandom weren't networking, they were genuinely trying to connect with other people. But like any skill, over time, through a lot of trial and error, I started to figure things out. And for all intents and purposes, it really was like learning any other new skill. Once you do it enough times in different scenarios, you start to pick up what works and what doesn't. Now, it really doesn't matter what the topic of the conversation is. These social skills that I picked up over time have led me to be able to engage in conversations, debates, and ideation about basically everything. Well, I guess I shouldn't say absolutely everything. And if I'm not the best source of information on a topic, admitting that in front of people didn't feel nearly as embarrassing. The other side effect that I really didn't see coming was that these connections and social acumen actually inspired me to create. This basically closed the loop for me, where not only could I fit into spaces where I had no formal training, but I could contribute to them as well. That's honestly a big reason why I started to make these videos, to give back to a fandom that has given so much to me, but also to work on and practice a skill that is completely devoid of what I do for a living or studied for over a decade in school for. And the best part about all of this is that I'm definitely still learning. If there's one thing I've taken away from this fandom, it's that you never really stop learning skills on how to be a better human, and that's honestly one of the biggest compliments I can give this community. For me, events like conventions, fur meets, or even hanging out with people online in places like VR still function as social boot camps disguised as fun weekends. I continue to learn more about effective communication in 3 days than in 5 years of professional development training. The skills I've developed, real listening instead of waiting to speak, and connecting with diverse experiences have also transferred directly to my professional life as well. Returning to work, the extra perspectives give me new ways on how to communicate my ideas that are a lot easier to understand. My social operating system has received a complete upgrade, turning cross-departmental projects with people who weren't in my field of study into interesting challenges rather than obstacles. And it's all thanks to this supposedly weird community teaching me exactly what my professional life was missing. Looking back on it now, I can really see how these two parts of my life actually complement each other pretty well. My professional background gives me the analytical skills to solve problems in a career that financially supports my furry adventures, but being a furry, that's what taught me to connect with people as people. For the record, I kind of randomly just threw this script together and really didn't know where I wanted to go with it, but what I realized while writing and indeed speaking it out is that we all need these seemingly contradictory elements in our lives. The conventional path gives us stability, while our weird communities help us discover missing parts of ourselves, especially in ways that we can't really imagine until you're immersed in the community itself. And this has all led me to not really being embarrassed to call myself a furry. Because at the end of the day, in reality, I'm not who I am now without this fandom. And I've seen it time and time again. The most interesting people are shaped by these unexpected detours, not by following a single straight path. And as unexpected as this detour was, I'm so glad I decided to dive all the way into this weird community, and hopefully the same happens to you. Alright, that's it for this one. We'll be back to our regularly scheduled programming of explaining random things about this fandom in the next one, but thanks for sticking around for this one. I'll catch you on the next one, but until then, stay wild out there. Peace.